Catapulting Commissions family. What's up, team? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Catapulting Commissions podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Garcia. So here's the deal. If you've been with this show for a long time, thank you. I love your listening. If you're a brand new listener, welcome. Be sure to click that subscribe button. Now, we have talked to numerous guests over the years on growth, sales, personal development, building your brand, marketing, etc., on how to grow in the sales and entrepreneur space. Here is a special topic that hits really close to home. And let me tell you about our guest and tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and we'll bring him in. Brett Berry was a Hall of Fame President's Club winning sales rep and has been a top producing sales leader in multiple industries. He's also the author of The Selling Edge, How to Reach the Top in Any Sales Industry. His newest book, Promoted, The Proven Path to Career Advancement, is available for pre-order right now. He's a baseball enthusiast, a fitness junkie, happily married with 3 kids, lives in the greater Sacramento area. And for more information, we're going to give you all the details how to get connected with Brett. But for the time being, Brett, welcome to the show.
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you here, bud. So Catapulting Commissions family, I got to be honest with you. I have had guests that we've spoken about their books and different things. Brett, I actually had an opportunity to read the entire book pre-launch and share Brett some of my feedback. So it hits close to home to have him on the show today. So let's really jump in this, right? So you wrote a book, The Selling Edge, a couple years ago. Second book around, Promoted, The Proven Path to Career Advancement. If someone's listening to this show right now and is like, I'm a salesperson, or I want to grow in my career, and they're probably going to be the ideal person that benefit from this book. But let's get the idea out of this, right? What's the premise behind the book, and why did you bring this book to market?
So when I write books, I think of where I was 12, 13, 14 years ago at that time. And the premise of this book is exactly that, of where I was back in 2008, 2009. I was at a point where, like you had said, I had been a top producing sales rep in multiple different industries, was looking to make the transition to leadership. But I was having a tough time making it happen. And I wish that a book like this existed back then, that gave me a very clear roadmap I could follow, that gave me much needed advice that I hadn't gotten at that point in my career. And had I had that, I think I would have been in a position that I've been at a lot faster. So that's really the impetus for writing the book, was so that people that are in that position where I was at 12, 13 years ago, so they'd have this opportunity to get this information in front of them.
So, let's if you don't mind, Brad, I'd love to be a little bit more transparent. Where were you at 12 or 13 years ago? Like, you don't have to name the company, but kind of give a little background, what the industry you're in, what your job was, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So I had done at that point 5 years of high level, B2B and B2C sales, previous company we worked for together. And at that point, I had been in the medical device industry as a top performing sales rep for 3 to 4 years. I'd won a couple President's Clubs, and things were going well. I was running a top producing territory, but I wanted to do more. I saw the value in and the benefit that I could bring to the company and other people by being in a leadership role. So that's where I was. I was a medical device sales rep and looking to make that transition into management.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, Brett, the reason this book hits close to me, and you and I had a similar background in that capacity, right? We worked for a previous company, the same company many years ago. I was in that same role, right? I think I was 4 years for a medical device company as an individual contributor, did very well, then got promoted into management. And I'll be honest with you, there's really no roadmap, at least at the time. There wasn't a roadmap on how to get promoted. And there's a lot of things that we don't think about in terms of building this brand or building yourself prepared to be promoted. And one of the lessons that I took from your book, you talked a lot about, you had a VP, someone gave you a harsh conversation that you weren't quite ready for management. Can you kind of share a little bit on that story, on that path to management? Because many managers, let's be really clear here, many companies will promote a sales manager because they're a good individual sales rep. And their onboarding or training program for managers really is substandard. And in my opinion, what makes a good sales rep doesn't always transition and translate to being a good manager. So let's talk about that conversation when you first expressed interest in management, kind of got, for lack of better words, told you weren't quite ready just yet, but you had some things to still prove. So can we elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had applied for a couple management positions at that time, and my old AVP of the West, Charlie, when he called me to let me know I didn't get the job, obviously I was disappointed, but what I did is I took that as an opportunity to try to get feedback from him in terms, and ultimately I ended up networking up the chain in the same way to get feedback from these senior leaders as to why were the people that were getting promoted, why were they making the decisions that they were a good choice to lead sales teams? And then what was the gap area? What was I missing out on? Or what were the skills or habits that I hadn't shown them that I had yet, so that they felt comfortable putting me in that position? And then fast forward, a few months later, and I talk later in the book around a national sales meeting back in 2009 in Florida, where I ended up having three very key conversations. One was another one with Charlie. The second one was a conversation with our VP of sales at the time, a guy named Alan, awesome guy. And then our VP of human resources. And I walked away from that national sales meeting. It was like the light bulb went off, where I started to see little sprinkles of what the things were that I was missing. And one of them was exactly what you said just a minute ago, Anthony, was a lot of the top things that make a top salesperson successful. Some of those skills translate into management. Of course, knowing the business and being able to know what it takes to sell in a particular industry, obviously that's very transferable. But there were other components that went into leading a team that were ideas that I had never been exposed to yet. And a few of them, one was the biggest thing was Alan asked me, he said, I don't want you to tell me this right here, but for me to support you moving forward and us investing in you in terms of leadership development, all that, I got to be sold on why you want to go into management in the first place. Management, the responsibility is a lot more. You don't necessarily make more money. There's actually a good chance you can make a lot less money than you're making now as a top rep. And there's a lot of situations that you're going to be put into that are going to be very difficult, very hard to navigate, and it's not easy. It's not straightforward. So before we support that, I want you to have an eyes wide open approach and have an understanding of what it's going to look like, what that life is like. And once you know that, if you're still on board and you still want to do this, you come to me and you tell me the reasons why, and then we'll support you, investing in you in leadership development and getting you some opportunities to learn these skills. And to me, I thought that was some of the best advice that I've ever received to this point, is having an understanding as to why I wanted to make that move. And then obviously from there, the dominoes started to fall into place.
Well, one, kudos to you, Catapulting Commissions Academy. I hope you get the book. The link's in the show notes. But I love, the humility, right? I don't know if this was your attitude then, but the way I read it in the book, it was almost like there was I don't want to say a level of entitlement, but almost like, hey, this is the next career projection. I've put up the numbers. I should be next batter up. And your AVP kind of pushes back on you, which I think is awesome, because the world of management, you said something right now that really kind of hits a chord with me. Right, you don't necessarily make more money in management if you're a top sales performer. That wasn't really communicated to me when I moved into management. I took a $225,000 pay cut year over year to move into management. Had a cool title, worked way more. So it definitely kind of was eye opening. But you said that you had to find the reasons why. So, Brett, a little on your background. We didn't dive too deep into it, but you've been in management and leadership roles now, for various different organizations, startups, large companies. What were some of those reasons why you wanted to make that transition to management? And then let's go on the inverse. Someone's listening that wants to get into management. What are some of the reasons you think that, hey, this probably isn't the right reason or a good reason to want to move up into management?
Yeah, no, great questions. For me, it was I wanted to contribute at a higher level. I've always had, growing up, I grew up playing sports, played football and baseball my whole life, played baseball in college, was always the team captain, really enjoyed being in that leadership position. But what I really enjoyed about it wasn't the aspect of being in charge, it was the overall influence of helping other people and seeing other people succeed. And so that was really, the biggest thing for me is I felt like I had achieved a lot in terms of an individual contributor as a salesperson. I had done it in a couple different industries, and I knew that I had checked that box. Uh, I found that, and I felt that I was going to have a greater level of fulfillment, being able to empower other people and help coach them and coach a team. And then the other aspect of knowing that I can contribute to a company at a higher level, that was really important to me, knowing that although I had done well in my own individual territory, the opportunity to run a region or run a department across the whole nation and the effect and the impact that could have, not just on the company, but more people within that company, those are really attractive to me. And I think, the second part of your question is, when is it not a good idea to get into management? Um, I think, well, one, if those aren't your approaches, the first two things, then that's probably a leading indicator. But I think there are some people that are just better cut out to be individual contributors, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I know a lot of people that have been individual sales reps their whole career and have done extremely well. And, sometimes that works best for them. I think, and I talk about this in the book, there's some different things you need to take into consideration when you consider if making a move into leadership is right for you. One is you're not going to have the same level of control as you do with your own individual territory. When you think about it, if you're in a sales leadership position, you're going to have anywhere from 7, 8, 10, maybe more people reporting to you. And 99+% of the time, you're not going to be with those people when they're doing what they need to be doing for the company. And so you need to be okay with that, knowing that you're going to have to hire people, you're going to have to train them, you're going to need to support them along the way, but you're also going to have to be able to rely on them doing what they need to do to accomplish their objectives. I think, another key component that a lot of people don't think about, the income piece we talked about, that for sure is a factor. If you have your own individual territory, you kind of have a good level of control to some extent over your income. The minute you have 8 to 10 people reporting to you or more, that level of control of being able to pull a lever or two and influence your compensation, it's not as clear cut as that, obviously. And then I think the other thing is, from a lifestyle standpoint, travel. What are the travel requirements? If you're going to move into a management role, especially in medical device, there's probably a decent amount of overnight travel that's going to factor into that equation. Maybe not quite as much post-COVID as there was before COVID, but it's going to be a factor. And so to me, I would really think through what's your home situation like, or if you're married, if you have kids, who's going to take care of the kids when you're traveling? Are you going to be able to travel? What's that flexibility look like? And then I think, there are considerations that you have to take into account that are specific to the company you work for. And what are the expectations that the company and the bosses above you are going to have if you transition into that position? Because that's going to differ a little based on, the company you work for and how they operate. But to me, I think those would be the key things that you really want to think through long and hard before making the decision. And if those boxes are still checked and all is green, then go for it.
Yeah, it's hearing this conversation again. Reading the book was surreal to me because hearing the conversation live surreal to me. I there was a lot of things you just said right now that I definitely resonated with when I was still in corporate. The hotel travel, it's something that's not. You mentioned it. Hey, account for it. And I got to be honest with you, Brett, like I had to learn how to do that. I was in my last role, and I was in a corporate role, and I was covering majority of the state of California and Hawaii. I mean, I was spending 115, 140 nights a year in a hotel.
Yeah.
I have a family. It definitely my marriage took a little learning curve to get to it. It was rough. And then when COVID came, it took a learning curve to get back the opposite, where I was always home. So there's definitely some challenges there. You have to really ask yourself. So that really hits with me. The one thing that I didn't, let me rephrase this. I knew, but I didn't know how serious it was as an individual contributor, for the most part, I mean, I hit my number every year. I never missed my number. But if I had a bad month or a bad quarter, you have your conversation. And like you said, I had control. I'm like, don't worry about it. I knew what was going on. I knew where I had to go spend time. I knew where to pump the oil at to get some growth. When you're in management, the level of accountability in my experience was so high, where it was like, yeah, I am accountable. And I think in my highest head count in that space, I had 9 people. And I was like, oh, I'm accountable for all 9. We didn't hit our number. And you're flying me back to corporate to me to explain why we didn't hit our number. And I'm here standing in front of the bullet. Like, I got to take it. So that was definitely, you hear about it, but when you're taking accountability for a poor performance or a slow start, that hit me hard.
Yeah, no,
So,
I think there's and you bring up a good point. I think there's a lot of things come up in management where, no one's ever talked to you about this, or you don't know that that's going to be a part of the job, or maybe you don't know it's going to look exactly that way. And that's a great example. And I think that's, what I try to do through the book is go through it and really highlight, a lot of these things. I talk about the responsibility factor of, in leadership, nothing's necessarily your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix it. And ultimately, that's what companies are looking for. The higher up the ladder you move, and they care about people, and they care about personal situations and challenges, and we all have that. But the objective of the job doesn't go away. What the board is expecting in terms of the financial performance of the company, that doesn't go away for that CEO, regardless of what's happening, personally with the people under him. And so, I think it's a great point, but and you do have to know that the higher up the ladder you get, the higher that increased responsibility is going to be. Which to me is why it's that much more important for people to really be prepared for leadership positions and be excited about them. And if you're prepared and you've gone through good training, and you know that this is what you're going to be expected, it's going to be expected of you, and you know what to expect, then I feel like it's a much better experience, obviously, and it's more enjoyable as well. So
yeah, I definitely. I think the expectations and knowing what you're getting yourself into do transition to a great, loving management career. There's something in the book you talk about in chapter 2, and you talk about intentionally building your brand. And I got to be honest with you, I go back. Like I said, Brad, this book, you were writing it. I felt like you were writing it to me when I was still in my corporate life. I go back to building my brand, and I don't think I did a really good job at building my brand to get into management. As a matter of fact, I know I didn't. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to intentionally build your brand as an individual contributor to be ready for that next step in management?
yeah, absolutely. And I did a horrible job too. I mean, I wrote a whole chapter about it in the book. I did such a bad job early on. And I think it's an easy trap to fall into too. When you think about it, for most salespeople, especially if you're a high producing salesperson, you're making a good income. You're getting a lot of awards at conferences. The VPs and the CEOs and people are coming up, shaking your hand saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Thank you for what you're doing." And I think, in some ways it almost gives you that sense of that, you can't do anything wrong. But I'm going to pivot here and ask the question now: would the CEO be comfortable handing you the keys to the company? And, obviously in terms of a skill level or experience level, that, not in that way, maybe not. But when I say that, the real question is in terms of your character, your responsibility, how you portray yourself, and the way the company needs to be portrayed at a corporate level. Do those things all align? And for me, early in my career, absolutely not. I was that salesperson. I was the party guy. Uh, I shut down every happy hour. I felt like that's what went along with sales, right? The happy hours, the good times. But what I didn't realize is when I did go to make that transition to management, I had branded myself as the fun party guy and not as, hey, this guy is incredibly responsible. This guy cares about our people. This guy is going to represent the company well. And not that I couldn't do any of those things, but it was a big aha moment that when I realized that I hadn't. And so I think, if I were to give someone advice that's listening to this and that's really serious about going down that leadership path, this is a piece of advice I wish I would have gotten earlier on. I mean, and I wish someone, clearly people realized that this was the case, right, with me. And I wish someone would have said earlier on, look, hey, you're branding yourself in a way that is leading you down this path. And if you want to go down this path that's more of the leadership path, you can still be fun and you can still have a drink and obviously be social with people, but you need to learn how to convey yourself and present yourself in a different way. So I wrote a whole chapter about that, and there's some fun stories about when my wife and I first got married, and I lost a bunch of weight, and a bunch of doctors and coworkers that I worked with thought I was sick because I showed up like a completely different person. And the reality was I wasn't going out for happy hour 3-4 nights a week. And uh, so, yeah, I think that's something that I couldn't stress to people enough, is to really be mindful of, how do you need to be perceived by the people above you. And I wouldn't say don't be someone you're not. Don't fabricate anything. Be who you are. Believe in what you believe in, but really be mindful of how you present yourself and what that looks like to others.
Yeah, it's you mentioned the happy hours. I know you talked about it in the book, and there's some national sales meeting stories. I mean, I look at my career and I'm like, man, dude, I wish somebody would have pulled me aside earlier. You talk in the book a little later in the book. You talk about finding a mentor, and I'm thankful I had a few people pull me aside. But I think the damage had been done. Right, it was a reputation that was challenging to get over. So if you're listening to this Catapulting Commissions family and you're in that position, my college roommate's dad, right? And my college roommate passed a couple of years ago, but his dad, we were at a wedding. We were like young, and his dad comes up and he was like, "Listen, boys, enjoy the show. Don't be the show." And I was like, you laugh, and you're like, years later, I'm like, man, I wish I should have had that mantra with me as I moved into my corporate career, because yeah, you can definitely ruin, in my opinion, you could ruin your chance at advancement or promotion at one national sales meeting, at one regional sales meeting, at one happy hour, just by doing the dumb stuff.
Yeah, no, and I'm incredibly grateful that I never made any career limiting maneuvers or anything like that got me in trouble with HR or anything like that. Um, but definitely, I could have branded myself a little bit better early on, and it would have gotten me on the radar of senior leaders much quicker.
All right. I'm with you on that, man. Kudos. I good for you. And I know I always joke I dodged a few bullets, so I'm but there's people who aren't fortunate enough. So definitely take that from the book, right? Intentionally building your brand. Another thing you talk about in the book is kind of identifying and building a roadmap, right? Like in saying, hey, this is what I want this to look like. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think this is where one of the areas where leadership development really falls off. I think, and I go through it. I think most people, a lot of people do a good job of putting up the numbers, getting on the radar, stating their intent, letting people know they want to do other things. But the actual roadmap to look at what are the skills that are necessary for the next role that I need and that I want to get, and where are the gap areas that I need to address? And then how do I get the experience, one, to develop the skills, but the other piece is to show the senior leaders above me that I have those skills and that promoting me into this next position is not a risk. It's a logical decision and that makes sense. And so In producing a roadmap, I mean, you really have to look at what are the things that are going to be required in that next role that gives you that experience. And the example I use in the book actually is one of my daughters is a ballerina and has been. She's been a ballet dancer since she was 3 years old. And she's 15 now, is flying all over, getting tons of opportunities, and she's fantastic. And her school that she dances at, they're great. They do a ballet recital every year, and they put on, I think, 7 or 8 shows over a 3 or 4 day period of time. And it is so dialed in. I mean, the music, the lighting, the dancers, the costumes, it is a production. And they practice all year for that. And when you think of management and people moving into other roles, how many people get a year or two of practice, or essentially a dress rehearsal, a year or 2 year dress rehearsal to get ready for the next role? And in creating a roadmap, that's really what I mean is you got to talk to your manager and talk to those above you and really find out what are the skills and what are the activities going to look like. So if you're a sales leader, obviously hiring people, that's probably the most important thing you're going to do, right? And so I think if there's any opportunity for you to be able to sit in on interviews, interview candidates with your boss, and that piece differs a little bit company to company, depending on how much people are hiring and what that looks like. But any opportunity to help evaluate candidates and learn about that piece, I think is huge. Secondly, how to run an effective team meeting. One of the things that Leanne talked to me about, our VP of Human Resources, when we sat down at that national sales meeting, was really the success of a team. It really comes down to the culture that's created by the leader and how supported the people on the team feel that the leader supports them. And one of the ways I think where managers either do really well or do really bad is in how they lead their team meetings. How engaged are they? How positive are they? Do they get people talking? Do they let people share concerns openly in an open dialogue? And then, do they really try to help provide solutions and show people what best practices look like? I mean, all these things, anyone that's run a successful team knows that these are the types of things you have to do to run an effective meeting. But a lot of people don't get the practice at doing that. And so for me, when I was VP of sales a couple jobs ago, our managers, they ran the team meetings, and people that wanted to get into management, that was one of the things that I had them do very early on, is got them involved in that process. And then I think being able to give and receive feedback is such an important thing. Becoming a field sales trainer, I think, just thinking through logically, if you're a medical device rep or if you're a sales rep in any industry, usually most companies have some type of a field sales trainer program where you can mentor newer representatives and help in the training process. And to me, the biggest value of that is not only in teaching, but also in really getting good at giving feedback to people and giving it in a way where it's well received, to where the person will take that feedback and will take action and do something different that's going to give them a better result. I found a lot of times, when sales teams, when things go bad, it's because the manager gives the feedback, but it's not given in a way that's received by the teammate well. And so they end up not taking it, or they don't listen. And I think those 3 areas in terms of just creating a roadmap are so important. And that was the biggest thing that changed for me. It is once we had those hard conversations, I was getting a new manager at the time. We sat down, and he was a very experienced sales leader, had been at the VP level before. And we sat down, we created a roadmap somewhat similar to what I just mentioned. And it helped me get that practice. And, adding a leadership development program, or potentially an MBA or advanced training, anything like that, I think is really important as well. Anything you can do to help educate yourself on what the next job is going to look like in the bigger picture. But yeah, I think, roadmap is essential, and staying accountable is a whole another piece of that too.
Yeah, in reading your approach on the roadmap, it really takes we don't accidentally get into management. Like, it doesn't happen by chance, right? It really is like an intentional, do these steps. And the kicker here, and it's not always guaranteed you're going to get there, right? So that's it's 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 a real, how I look at it when we do some of that stuff. It's a real chance to see, hey, is management for me? Because you're going to do a lot, maybe go unnoticed, maybe not get recognized, and maybe not get the job, right? But you're still going to put in that work. So I love how you talk about the roadmap here. We have a few minutes left, Brett, and I think this kind of ties into, kind of some of the things you talk about, the roadmap, and I'm sharing with you that, it's not always guaranteed, and I think you would agree with me on that. There's no guarantees you're going to get promoted, but you finished the book talking about becoming off self and on purpose. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So this is actually an old RVP of sales that we both used to work under. He used to say this: all you need to be successful is to be off self and on purpose. And I think we got what it meant, but for me, there were a couple aha moments where it dawned on me that this is the ultimate, like, what you really have, what your mindset has to be successful in management. In the book, I talk about at the end of the leadership program that I had participated in. It was before, I think, the next year's national sales meeting. All of the C-suite had all of us participants come in the night before, and we had to give a big old presentation at dinner in front of all of them. So there's this group of 50, 75 people. It's the CEO, all of the VPs, a couple of the board members of the company. Intimidating audience to try to have to present in front of, especially as a sales rep at the time. And I remember getting up to the microphone, and I don't know why, but they had me go last. I guess they thought I was going to wrap it up and tie it all together or something. And I go to get up to the microphone and speak, and literally nothing comes out. And like my voice, like I couldn't get the words out. And then I remembered I was going to start with the quote by Cal Ripken. And then I just decided, all right, I'm just going to let this rip. And I said, so Cal Ripken played in 2,632 consecutive baseball games, literally 18 years, never missing a start, played shortstop for the Baltimore Orioles. And after that, I mean, that's a record in sports. It's never going to be broken by anybody. I think most people would agree. But at the end, at the end of that streak, one of the reporters asked him, how were you able to do this? And he said, I've gotten really comfortable being uncomfortable. And I said to the audience, I said, as you can tell, I'm operating under that mindset right now. And literally the whole room just erupts in laughter. And it literally settled me, and it dawned on me in that moment that, all right, I'm actually not giving this presentation for me. I'm giving this for them. I'm just the one that's delivering the message. And I think, in terms of management and leadership, sometimes, that is a really good way to think about it. Is it's not about you as a manager, but everything is on you. It is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to deliver the message. It's your responsibility to develop the team. It's your responsibility for the team to perform for the company. And so I think, when you operate under that mindset, I think there's a couple key things that start to happen. One, you're going to be far more prepared. Like if you can show up prepared for meetings, prepared for whether it's a team meeting with your team, whether it's a one-on-one meeting, if you know it's not about you, you're going to spend the time to prepare. Your mindset's also, you're going to go into meetings not thinking about yourself and how you can benefit from it, but you're going to go in asking, how can I help this person? How can I help this situation? What's the objective here, and how can I help facilitate that? And I feel like, when you go in with that mindset and the focus isn't on you, it relaxes you a little bit, and it lets you operate with a clear head. And you know that you have an important role here that extends far beyond you. Also, I think, I talk in the chapter on that point about learning how to remove yourself from the equation. This is something that, and I give a pretty good example where, as a sales leader, I would have sales reps and managers that would come to me with ideas all the time, and they were fantastic ideas. The only problem is the idea typically would benefit them and may not benefit everybody else. And if you're a VP of sales, obviously you're trying to create, assets and things and that are going to benefit everybody. And so I use the example of a rep that had reported to me one time, and I said to him, hey, all right, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go home. Great idea. It was a marketing piece he thought we should develop that that did have some merit, but it would have just benefited him at the time. I said, go home. I want you to take yourself out of the equation and think through everything that marketing has that they need to contribute, that what their responsibilities are this year. And if you remove yourself from the equation and it still makes sense to everybody else, bring it back and we'll talk about it. And so he came back, and obviously he had adjusted it a little bit, and we did take it to marketing. But I feel like a lot of people, like, that's something where if you really want to connect with a senior leader, and I'm talking like VP level, CEO level, your ideas need to be solutions that can help the whole company and help them with their objectives at the scale of the problems they're trying to solve in that magnitude. That will get you on their radar. If you bring them solutions that, when they dig into it, if it only helps you in the moment, that's not going to align with the way that they're looking at things. And then I think the last thing, when your focus is off yourself and on purpose, it forces you to think about always doing the right thing in the moment. And I coached high school baseball for a long time, up until just a few years ago. And we literally had 2 rules for the team. 2 rules. That was it. Rule number 1 was be on time. Rule number 2 was do the right thing. And I think, most people, they understand both of those very well. And the only time that number 2 seems to falter is when people put their focus back on themselves and not on what's the overall purpose that we're trying to accomplish here. Whether it's a family, whether it's a sports team, whether it's a team in business, whether it's a company, when your focus is off of you and on the purpose of what we're trying to do for the greater good things happen.
Kudos to that, my friend. Yeah, off self, on purpose. It's something that I've taken to heart in in management. If you're an entrepreneur, Catapulting Commissions family, this has to hit you. Off self, on purpose. It may not about doing the right thing or being on time, but when you're running your own business, I mean, off self, on purpose is everything, because it holds you accountable to do the stuff that sometimes isn't as enjoyable. And another way where I found off self, on purpose hit me, Brett, is being a parent. That is, you and I, we will both talk, we have girls, like you have to be off self and be on purpose to be a parent. So appreciate that, man. So Catapulting Commissions family, the book, promote it. It's available for pre-copy right now. Brett, what's the website and the URL and all the fun stuff where the Catapulting Commissions family can find the book, put their pre-orders in, and all that stuff?
Yeah, so a couple ways you can contact me and find my work. LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. My name, Brett with 1 T, and then Barry, Barrie. That's the handle. So if the listeners want to go and check out my profile, click the bell. I do post a lot of sales and leadership content there as well. So if they want to follow my information, that's a great way to find me. Obviously, there's a link in my bio that links right to the book and any of my other stuff as well. And then my website also, brettbarrie.com. I publish a sales and leadership blog on there as well. So I'm pretty easy to find online. But if they like what they've heard here and want to pick up a copy or 2 of the book, I'd be greatly appreciative. And if they like what they read, please leave a review on Amazon. That, as a self-published author, that helps me more than anyone would ever know. So.
Well, Brett, I'll tell you what, man, you definitely got some book sales from the Catapulting Commissions family. And those links, Catapulting Commissions family, it's right there, brettbarrie.com, BRETBARRIE.com. You also have the link to Brett's LinkedIn. Brett, we appreciate you jumping on the show, man. I think this is a topic that needs to be explored, and I appreciate you sharing this within the business community. And Catapulting Commissions family, we're at that time of the show. You know what to do. Be sure to go get connected with Brett, subscribe, like, let us know your thoughts, and I'll see you next week.